The death of masculinity in the West in the last 30 years has to be studied, and in history, it is going to be seen as a tragedy how masculinity was willing to just roll over and decay in some of the best nations the world has ever seen. But here we are now. Either way, there are still some guys left that got that energy, that love to protect and provide, that love women, that love society, that love tradition, that are still masculine and do it with grace and make it look easy, even though it's one of the hardest things to do. Let's go ahead and get right into the video.
So I wanted to return to a comment you made earlier about the generation of lost boys. You likened them to the Peter Pan movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So when we're talking about Red Pill Media as being a large influence, and I wanted to define that. It's a reference to the Matrix in which a lot of these media heads
I'm familiar with that.
talk about unplugging yourself, and it's about waking up to the realization that there is an active attack on masculinity, that men's rights need to be, that men are being oppressed in a way, and that men's rights need to be advocated for. Many people have attributed the Red Pill Media to rise in this almost generation of lost boys. I kind of wanted to get your opinion on do you see this generation of lost boys as a failure of say masculinity, or are there potential other factors, economic, social factors, such as, the death of the American dream, increasing costs of living in America, increased costs of education?
Good question.
Are there any other reasons as to why this generation of lost boys might exist, or do you basically attribute it to
I acknowledge all of that, of course.
People are obese because they're eating horrible food. There's a lack of sleep because people are addicted to their cell phones. Niggas don't punch no more. They not getting no vitamin D. Masculinity is an absolute crisis. Sperm count is down 60%. And since 1979, the average man has been losing 1% testosterone each year. A 25-year-old man now has about 20% less testosterone on average than a man his same age in 1979. You want to feel more masculine and energetic, and you don't want to be as depressed, you start by getting good sleep, by exercising. That is base existence, by the way. Every human has exercised every day throughout all of human history, and now it's just an option. It's not really an option. If you want to live base human existence, you should be exercising every day. You need to be exercising. You need a good sleep routine. Don't be obese, and that's where you start. You're base level human once you start doing those things, and then you could build.
One of them, it's a very good faith question, and thank you. In America, we made a stupid decision in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s to shut down our factories in the middle part of the country and basically disenfranchise and deindustrialize tens of millions of working class men and tell them to go move to the cities and learn to code.
If you're an American, that should be upsetting to you. If you're a man, that should be upsetting to you, especially if you're a black man. Man, these places were booming. You talk about Detroit, you talk about Motown, you talk about Philadelphia. When we had all of these places and these companies were here, they depended on the people here, and the moment they had the opportunity to globalize just to save a couple of dollars, they abandoned the people in those cities. Those cities are now ghost towns, and they moved those jobs overseas just to make a little bit of profit. They abandoned the people of this country, and they were allowed to for the sake of profit. And that's why men need to start learning to be a little bit more self-reliant, a little bit more modest, and start to pull back from these companies because they're not dependable. The moment they can replace us with immigrants, the moment they can replace us with AI, they will, and they have. I think that men as a whole traded in the skills that made us independent, like farming, like being able to build a house, carpentry, all those different skills in order to depend on white-collar institutions that are soul-crushing. And now because we don't have the independence, because we traded in our skills, we are now dependent on this white-collar, ultra-feminine culture. I'm not exempt in this, by the way.
And tell them to go move to the cities and learn to code.
Right.
I said this in the previous Q&A, but I can again, which is that a family used to be able to be supported on a single income of 35 weeks of labor a year. Now it takes upwards of 60 weeks of labor a year. However, given all the economic and social and all those factors, the largest of all of them is the cultural and the educational that has infantilized men and hyper-feminized them in the messaging, in the outreach, and in the treatment. And so I can give you specific examples,
in what way has the education system infantilized men?
Look at how you dress, brother. And I know that's an unpopular take. You don't got to run to the comments because I already know it's an unpopular take, but look at how you dress. You're at Oxford. Are you not inspired by the tradition? Are you not inspired by the history that's around you, the work that people put in to build this building where great debates have been happening since the construction of the building? Do you not want to put yourself together in a way that reflects the history of the place that you're in? I stay in my house with a hoodie on. I got jeans on and I have my tennis shoes on while in my house when I work because it makes me feel more productive. How you dress reflects how you feel. It affects how you feel. At any moment, I'm ready. I go into a Walmart sometimes and I see grown men in Cookie Monster pajamas. And then they got on Crocs. I'm like, you can't even move around. Like if something goes wrong, a man walks in here with a gun and we got to defend our families as a whole, you can't even move and groove because you got on Crocs. And I know it's an unpopular opinion, but in my personal opinion, you don't need to be that damn comfortable everywhere you go.
The hypermedication of young men from in the core curriculum in America. We learn about toxic masculinity from ages 8 in public schools in California and in New York. We never talk about toxic femininity. Do you agree that there's toxic femininity as well?
Rampant.
I mean, I think it's an unfair double standard.
Why?
Well,
how can femininity not be toxic if masculinity can?
I'm not saying they can't be.
Do we teach kids about toxic femininity in our schools? No, tell me yes or no.
I mean, I think that they come from two very different places. I think toxic masculinity comes from a level of misogyny, where I think toxic femininity often comes from a reaction to a misogynistic system, which fundamentally oppresses and systematically oppresses women.
In this patriarchy that's oppressive to women, men do all of the hard, dirty, dangerous jobs that make up 92% of workplace deaths because we want to oppress women. In this oppressive patriarchy, we invented modern medicine to make sure that women are safer during childbirth. We invented birth control so that women could have sex with people without having to worry about having children. We have all of these welfare programs that you damn near have to be a woman to even get. Scholarships, homeless shelters, exclusive for women. These are all things that the oppressive patriarchy created for the exclusive benefit of women. I just think that it's very interesting that some people think that a system that is so brutal to men is somehow created to oppress women.
I'm not saying that toxic femininity is a good thing, but I'm saying it's a much more understood and valid reaction to a system of oppression versus toxic masculinity, which oppresses.
Okay. So even if I grant you that,
They're clapping like seals. Brother, England is cooked.
are they teaching toxic? Is that term ever been used in a school that you know of?
What term?
Toxic femininity?
No, it's not.
Oh, that's weird. So only one sex gets criticized and called toxic. Maybe that creates a backlash.
Well, because one is creating a system of oppression.
No, that's your interpretation. No, you can make every excuse under the book that you'd like, but only one chromosome set gets criticized, called that they're terrible and awful, and that women basically need to be like go into the corporate world with no reservation. And young men see this pattern in the West and in our country from the authors, from the curriculum, from the music, from the movies. And we see, and of course, again, in the educational system proper, we have seen the infantilization of the young male. And so again, we know the data, you did agree to it, that young men are checking out completely, but we're actually living under a hyper-feminist West that is toxic. What does that mean? Speech police, feelings first, emotion over reason, community over individualism.
One of the worst parts about prioritizing emotions is it restricts you from the truth. Part of the masculine pursuit is trying to get to the truth. And sometimes to get to the truth, you have to be willing to be offended because the truth is sometimes pretty offensive. But that doesn't mean that it's not the truth. So we've abandoned our pursuit of truth in order to coddle emotions. And that's a dangerous place to be in.
Is the West stronger as it's become more feminine in the last 30 years? No. In fact, our morale is weaker. We're more suicidal. Our fertility rates are down. We have lost the balance. We've lost the yin and the yang between the male and the female. We lost what worked, and we have hyper-platformed. Your own prime minister, Boris Johnson, when he was talking at a summit, said we need to actually make things more feminine. Could you imagine if he said we need to make things more masculine? How does that sound to a dock worker in Brighton or someone in Essex? We need to make things more feminine? No. Instead, we need to restore the balance that God created man and women. And right now, and by the way, you want an example? Adolescence. How does that movie Adolescence not broadly generalize a theme that, first of all, doesn't exist? Secondly, is like a slow motion, like humiliation ritual for the young boys of Britain. Could you imagine if there was a similar movie criticizing young women that are like how they are the ones that are driving men away, about how catty they are, about how they don't want to be. No, it's fine.
Are there hoes that prioritize capitalism over family? That's a big deal.
I'll just complete the point. I could give you data point after data point, and I would ask you the question, has the West grown stronger the more effeminate has become?
Okay. You've said a lot
Yes, that's how a Q&A works. You ask the question and I answer, so I am the speaker. You know that's how it works. Yeah.
That's fine, thank you. Okay, so on your point about adolescence, I don't think adolescence is a generalization. We are not saying that every young boy in the UK is like this. We're not saying every young boy goes through this process. It's an example of what can happen when people fall into this kind of media. I think it's like, and it's more of a story or a warning to what can happen to people that, you know, fall into these bubbles, who don't find the help that they necessarily need, that can turn violent. And like, this is a perfect example of toxic masculinity, in which the boy feels like he's not affirmed in his masculinity and takes that out on women. Like that, we've also then seen, like, within men, like the largest contributor to like men's deaths right now is male suicide. Like, but I would argue that is not a factor of feminization, but instead a factor of masculinity. The idea that men can't be in touch with their feelings. You talked about feeling.
Well, if that's the case, why weren't suicide rates higher when men were more masculine?
Being effeminate. So men are simply not allowed to engage with their feelings at all. Like, men not allowed to talk about their feelings. These are large contributors to a massive problem within men's spaces that lead to what is the highest contributor to men's death, suicide. And I think this idea that, you know, men simply go back to work and if they're economically assured, then suddenly everything is fine. And, you know, men's mental health was never an issue before, like the 90s or whatever it was, when we used to start affirming men's mental health, I think is an unfair, it's an unfair point to make. And I think it doesn't speak to a lot of issues that a lot of young men face. And I think it's a dishonest way to go about talking about this conversation.
Yeah, you don't solve issues that young men face by telling young men to talk about the issues that they face. Young men have to solve their problems. Actually, too, and this is a biological difference between men and women, there's a hormonal difference. Men deal with stress and men alleviate stress by solving their problems. This is a real thing. You can look it up, by the way. Women alleviate their stress by talking about their problems.
When you're stressed, if a woman can talk about what she's feeling, what she's missing, what she's not getting, that will actually raise her estrogen level, and her stress levels will go down. Now, if a man is stressed and he talks about his feelings, his stress will only increase. That's a big aha, because every time a man is stressed, he'll stop talking. And when he stops talking, women panic because they don't know different. And they want to go in there. What are you feeling? What's going on? And if he starts talking, he'll just feel worse and worse and worse. And if he's a little frustrated with her, annoyed with her, and he sort of backs off, he's mulling it over in order to let it go, just like a woman would talk about things to let it go.
The Western ideology over the past 60 years has been, because there's a small minority of men that are violent, all men should behave like women. And by the way, when I say a small minority, I mean about 1% of men are actually violent criminals. So even how he thinks you should solve the issue by just having men sit around in a corner and talk about their feelings and cry, that doesn't help boys. Boys need to be active. We need to be dynamic. You know who doesn't shoot up a school? Usually the captain of the football team. You don't see the captain of the football team shooting up a school because he has structure. He has competition. He has a place to put his anger into passion and channel it into creation. Boys need to produce. So when you tell young boys to just sit around and talk about their problems and cry about their problems, it doesn't make them better. It actually makes them more stressed out and it makes them worse off.
Let's go to the point about male suicide and masculinity not being allowed to affirm.
So to your point, if it was true that men have always been miserable, why have the suicide rates gone up?
Right.
Well, because we've started recording suicides better. It's not to say that suicides didn't occur on this level. It's just we simply have better ways of recording.
That's rubbish, and you know. Body bags are data that transcends any sort of manipulation.
Right.
A self-inflicted gun wound or being hung, it was not like a mass reporting issue 60 years ago in this country or in the West. It is a material fact because we know it's happening in the Anglosphere. It's happening in Australia. It's happening in America.
Yep. It's
happening all across Europe. That suicide rates of men are going up. Depression is going up.
Yes.
They are correlated together. It's not a reporting issue. There's something undergirding it. And in fact, just one other thing, your own prime minister endorsed adolescence. He sent out a tweet saying, I was shocked to the core when I watched this film and everyone should watch it. So that is an endorsement from the top leader, other than, you know, the king of this country, of I don't even know, may the king endorse that.
I mean, an endorsement is not a generalization.
Well, hold on. No. He said, I'm troubled to the core of what this could become. And you have to, again, that is one example of thousands that I could give, one that is the most applicable to here to this country. And I guess I would just ask this question in closing. Do you think men would be happier if they were married and providing for a family?
I don't think marriage or the institution of marriage is the only way a man can be happy.
That's
what
not
I said.
yeah,
I said
that's not the
generally
question.
happier. Do you think men will be generally happier if they're married, providing, and have children?
I don't think that's a necessary factor to contribute to men's happiness.
What is your solution to bring about male happiness in the West? Mine is men get married, have children, and provide. What is yours?
His cry. Men cry. Boys should cry.
I think an affirmation of their emotions.
There it is. And I called it. I promise I have not seen this video yet, and I called it. Because that's the only solution that they have. Make men behave like girls and act like girls and express their emotions like girls, or they're not good men. If boys don't behave like girls because there are a small minority of boys that are violent, then that must mean that they're violent, and that means that they're toxically masculine. That's not how life works for young men. Young men could be on the side of the road literally dying if they don't help themselves, if they don't learn how to help themselves. The world doesn't care. The world doesn't care about a young man crying. Women can be emotional because if a woman's on the side of the road and she's crying, somebody's going to pull over and help her. If a woman's crying online, somebody's always going to come save the day. But that's not how men operate. And if you want a man to feel useless and want to drive him into suicide, tell him to just cry about his problems instead of solving his problems.
I think an openness to allowing men to express themselves in whichever way they want, even if that is in a more effeminate way or a Western, typically effeminate way. I don't think it's about ostracization. I don't think it's about
men express themselves through creation, not through crying.
Promoting one simple institution of living and disregarding all of those else. Men are free to live single, men are free to be in gay relationships. I don't think that the institution of marriage privileges one to a life of happiness over any other way of living.
So
yeah,
of
that's
course
so
you have the
stupid.
agency to do that.
That's so stupid.
With all due respect, have you been to London the last 10 years? Men can do whatever they want.
I live in London.
Are they happier? Men can dress how they want. Men can act how they want. They can go to any club. Has it worked?
Yeah, but also we've had austerity. There are other factors outside of simply just
You see what you're doing, respectfully. You're scrambling for an excuse to get away from the truth that's right in front of you.
I mean,
maybe men should get married and have children.
Okay, but I think
because it's worked for 2,000 years.
Yeah, but for that to work, we have to get the government out of our families. The government cannot be involved in our love lives. They should not be legislating our love lives. We have to get the government out of family. We got to get the government out of dictating who gets to see their children. A man shouldn't have to go through a government system in order to see his own children. That is absolutely crazy. You have a society of men who just feel like they are slaves and that they are powerless about their own destiny. When you can't even control your own house, how do you feel like you have any control over anything else in the world? Family is the first order of governance, and if you don't know what leadership looks like inside of your house, you're not going to know what good leadership looks like outside of your house, and that's why we have so many bad leaders. And by the way, I think that this has been done on purpose to neuter men and make them feel powerless, even in their own homes when they work hard to provide for their families.
Interesting. Can I challenge you on that, though?
Sure.
Why is it that the men of much poorer African and Asian countries don't have suicide issues, yet they have no money?
How do we know that?
Oh, we know. Again, by empirical third-party reported data from the UN, from the US State Department, there is not a suicide crisis in sub-Saharan Africa. There's not a suicide crisis in Southeast Asia with young men.
Because they're
so
based.
Explain to me that phenomenon. They're materially wealthy. They're not materially wealthy, and yet they're harming themselves. So why would you then say it's austerity?
Wait, sorry, say that again?
Okay, you're looking for another explanation for male unhappiness.
Yes.
I'm pointing to you to a part of the world that actually does value marriage and does have children, but they have no money.
Based.
So therefore, how could you say it is a material problem why the men of London, who can dress how they want, go to whatever bar they want, are not happy?
Because it's more than one reason. Like, there are multiple factors. It's not even just economic. There's economic, there's social, there's like religious pressures. There's so many, you cannot boil down a societal issue to one.
And I acknowledge
issue.
that, right? I even at the beginning, remember, I'm saying the biggest, the one that has an exponent on it, is that we have a biological urge that God gave us when he designed us, which is to be fruitful and multiply, for men to provide for the family.
Yep.
And when we suppress that, and we say that you can go live whatever lifestyle you would like, as already happens in the West. We have Exhibit A. We have a serious suicide, mental health, anxiety, depression issue. So I would just ask you to think over the next couple of days, months, or years, why is it that men in countries that barely have toilets and do not have 2 pounds to rub together, but they do have kids and they do have a wife, are much happier than someone with a big flat in downtown London? Something to think about.
I mean, I think happiness is a difficult idea to conflate in that sense. I mean,
No,
there are other duties.
they're less likely to kill themselves. Forget all these happiness indexes. If you kill yourself, you're not happy, right?
The West is just falling for a crazy fallacy, and that fallacy is the more things you have, the more material wealth you have, the happier you're going to be. And now we're in a time where we have more material wealth than ever before. We have more access to more things than ever before, but people are more depressed than ever before because it turns out the human experience can't just be dumbed down to how many iPhones you can afford or how nice your car is. There's a spirit in humanity that desires things outside of materialism. Tradition, family, dignity, honor, pursuit. A lot of the times, the intangible things that make us human are significantly more important than the tangible things that just make us comfortable. This is not an issue you could just throw iPhones at or throw money at or throw free things at. This is something that's existential, not just a material issue. Let me know in the comments below if this video is a W or L, and give me the HBO special. I help brother out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.